This is the first place Chaos deck list from Anthony Alvarado, the one that took down GOAT Format Worlds 2024. And I know from my YouTube analytics that some people will just go, oh, I got the deck list. I've got everything I need from this video. I'm going away. But there's a lot that we need to talk about here. There are a lot of unusual choices, things that, on the surface level might not look that unusual, but are kind of worthy of discussion. Things like, why aren't these trap dust shoots in the main, right? That's the elephant in the room. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about why these Book of Moons are in the main, where are the Night Assailants, all that good stuff. First, though, I want to say, to those who don't know, at this point, it's kind of clear that, Anthony Alvarado is just the GOAT of GOATs, right? I mean, God knows how many tournaments this guy has won at this point. If there was any doubt remaining, I think that doubt has been extinguished. And you read his interview and you get a lot of insight into how this guy thinks. One of the things that he was saying that I think is a really great point is he's saying, hey, I have so much experience in these chaos mirrors. I'm just super confident in that. What I'm not confident in is, all of my other matchups. He's not saying, oh, I think that I'm going to lose to a GOAT control player or that I'm going to lose to a Reasoning Gate player, but that he wasn't as confident in those matchups as he was in the mirror. So Trap Dust Shoot, it's a card that is great in mirrors, one of the best cards in mirrors, not really much of an MVP, though, in your other matchups. Pretty dead versus Warriors, and it's okay against GOAT control, but not amazing or anything. So you take these Dust Shoots out of the main, and it's hey, I have these fewer dead cards in Warrior matchups and Earth Aggro matchups people are going to play. Even against a deck like Burn, you don't really want Dust Shoot too much. So it kind of opens up your main deck for some of these other choices like Book of Moon, and it kind of makes your deck more well-rounded in a way. It makes you feel more confident. And I know a lot of the nerds are going to take issue with this in the comments, but I'm going to say it anyway. In these older Yu-Gi-Oh! Formats, a lot of the card choices that you play comes down to preference. Yes, I said it. There's no 100% optimal Chaos deck. Sorry, guys. A lot of it comes down to, again, what are your strengths as a player? What are your weaknesses as a player? What are the situations that you are trying to create that you know how to play well in? And I think this is a case where Anthony's saying to himself, I don't need the Dust Shoots for the mirror. I want to make sure that I have solid cards in all of my other matchups. Instead here we've got 3 Jargreeds. Some of these Chaos lists only have 1 or 2. But against something like Warriors, for example, right? Now, I think a lot of people will take this deck and just cut 3 Jargreeds for 3 Dust Shoots. But against something like Warriors, Jar of Greed is 1,000 times better than Dust Shoot, right? I mean, it's going to sway the matchup substantially because you're taking out this dead card from your deck and instead putting a card that allows you to draw into more power cards, helps you play around cards like Dust Shoot better, helps you play around cards like Morphing Jar better, even though not a lot of people play that anymore, helps you, get value out of people's Heavy Storms where they think, oh, they're going to get a 2-for-1, but instead you just chain a bunch of Jargreeds. And I mean, it's just generally a good card. And then you look at Book of Moon, and I've talked about this in my previous videos. Book of Moon is probably just the most underrated card in GOAT format. Let's be honest here. And, I get that, Book of Moon isn't as good today as it was 5 years ago in GOAT format, but that doesn't mean it's a bad card. That's not how things work. And when I see these other Chaos deck lists, and I see no Book of Moons in main or side, I'm just am I taking crazy pills here? What the hell is going on? Because against GOAT control specifically, Book of Moon is the best card that you could ask for because it counters their meta, gets under Royal Decree. You can flip down your own stuff, which believe me, we got plenty of things that we can flip down here. Save our Chaos Sorcerer from a Snatch Steal or something, which is pretty huge. So I like these Book of Moons in the main deck, and if you're one of these players who says, well, I don't want to main Book of Moon, I really do think that you should at least side them because these GOAT control decks are just banking on the fact that their Chaos players won't have Book of Moon. They're just yeah, I'm just all in on decrees and metas, and I'm just going to hope I never see a Book of Moon. And, the obvious counter is, well, play Book of Moon, right? So, makes total sense to me. Jargreeds make total sense to me. The monster lineup, again, I think a lot of this is preference. I do want to commend him on the 3 Faiths. It serves a few purposes. It's like the 6 light, gives you a little more consistency. Magician of Faith is just one of the power cards in the format. And with 12 spells, you can definitely play 3. If you're playing like 10 spells, I think it's a bit of a harder sell to argue that you should be playing 3. But this is one of those things, again, I've talked about this a little in my previous videos, where it's like, yeah, 90% of the time it's correct to play 2 faiths, but what separates like the great players like Anthony from like just kind of the above average players is that you got to recognize when that normal heuristic doesn't apply to you, right? Players, Yu-Gi-Oh players in particular, are very lazy in that they develop all of these mental shortcuts and then don't understand like when it's correct to deviate from them. Also, as a side note, we are siding meta, and having the 3rd faith does make our meta a little more live when we bring that in. So I like that as like the little icing on the cake. No Night Assailants. Not a lot of commentary to add there. It's, again, one of these like preference kind of things. We've seen people play 2. We've seen people play 1. We've seen people play 0. I'm not convinced that like Night Assailant is insane. Normally, to me, it's like if you're going with like the card destruction route, or like say you main a card destruction over like one of these Book of Moons, then I think it's like, okay, well now you kind of have to main the Night Assailants, or else like why are you playing card destruction? But if you're not playing card destruction, I think it becomes like tougher to argue. Night Assailant, it's one of these cards to me where it's like it's a little hit or miss. And sometimes in GOAT format, that's fine. But if I'm playing a card that's hit or miss, I want the hits to be like really big hits. Whereas Night Assailant, I feel like when it's good, it's not broken. But when it's bad, it's like pretty bad. And just in general, the whole like setting it and making it a man-eater bug, like yes, sometimes it's fine. Against a deck like Earth Aggro, I'd say like the man-eater bug mode is arguably even pretty good. But against a lot of the meta, the man-eater bug mode is not very good at all. So yeah, I think the monster lineup is like totally fine. We've got the 3rd Dakochi here. That's another one where it's like some people play 2, some people play 3. There's not really a lot to say there. Like, yes, you could get into the nuances of, oh, well, how does that affect your Chaos Return matchup? But that's like really, really minor. Won't really talk about the main too much more. Most of this stuff is standard, guys. It's stuff you've all seen before. But the few differences are pretty significant differences. Regarding the side, like, I'll just say, if someone showed me this 40-card main deck and said, hey, Alan, build me a side for this main, I probably would have picked, like, these exact 15 cards. Like, you could debate, like, oh, do you need the 2nd Zombira? Do you need the 3rd Dust Shoot? But, like, the side, you can't argue with most of this stuff. It's all stuff that's been proven to be good. GOAT's meta in the side has been more popular lately, and I think for good reason. It's good to bring in against the aggro decks. It works against other matchups as well, like Reasoning Gate, Chaos Return. So I like this package here. The Mind Control and Dust Shoot are just kind of cards that have been good in Chaos Mirrors forever. Not really too much to talk about there. Mystic Walks is kind of like, yeah, I hope we don't lose to Burn. We're not really teching for Burn too hard. Like, we don't have Decrees, we don't have Dust Tornado, we don't have Mobius. You know, I know that Anthony was kind of saying, hey, I'm hoping to dodge Burn. There were a couple of Burn decks in the top 8, but, you know, obviously wasn't a game changer for him. Still got first anyways. I'll just say, you know, I know some people, they're going to go in the comments and say, oh, you know, Worlds this year sucked. But there was like some decent amount of diversity. Like we saw Burn decks, we saw Chaos Control decks, we saw Goat Control decks. Aggro was like a little underrepresented. I think aggro players kind of need to get their shit together for next year if they want to bring home the gold. I think for this last year in particular, we've seen it kind of be the case where I think Chaos players have been better at like figuring out the aggro matchup than vice versa. And I think like if Chaos players just stop maining Dust Shoots, I think like aggro is going to be in a tough spot. They're going to be in a tricky spot. You know, not going to fall out of the meta by any means, but not something that they're going to be happy with. So let me know in the comments what you think about this deck, guys, because, you know, again, I know it's easy for, you know, the party poopers to come and say, like, oh, yeah, you know, this deck is, like, 100% standard, but, like, no, it's really not, actually. I mean, this was a good deck list, piloted by a good player, with some pretty significant innovations. Really, the Book of Moons and the main deck in particular, I think we could maybe see sticking around, or maybe not. Who knows? If you like this video, then I think you should also go watch my last video where I talked about my own build of Chaos, which Anthony Alvarado played in a previous tournament. Lots of interesting stuff there. Go watch that.